Hey, I'm Michael Coker, Mayor of the City of Mulberry, and did you know that when you operate with a local government, there's a lot of coordination that happens both at the county level and the state level, and sometimes even the federal level. So I'm going to talk about how Mulberry works with the U.S. government, the Georgia state government, and Gwinnett County government. Stay tuned. One of the interesting things about local government is the amount of coordination that must happen. And so when you run a city, unfortunately, that city's not just on an island, right? You can't just say, okay, we're on our own, we're going to take care of everything. There's a lot of coordination that happens between a county, a city, and a state government, and sometimes even a federal government. And so if you follow me on social media, you might see photos of me where I've met with a state representative or a Georgia DOT representative, or maybe even our local representative at the federal level. And so if you follow along, it takes a lot of effort for both the mayor and council of a city to advocate for that city to make sure projects get completed, things move along. And so this podcast is going to talk a little bit about the various organizations that Mulberry works with on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you stay safe and that our community remains a great place to live. And so that basis or that coordination is something that's very important. And I'm going to kind of go through each level. So obviously we're the municipal level, we're the city level. And so we have our own city government, we make our own ordinances, we make our own decisions, but we also have to work with the representatives at the county level. Now, obviously, if you're a fan of our podcast, you know that unfortunately our relationship with the county is we're always trying to make it better. We're always wanting to work with the commissioners as a good member of the Gwinnett County community. But unfortunately, some of our requests to work with them or be part of the community have been kind of pushed away. And so we've kind of been forced to deal with lawsuits and cancel permits and other issues. And so obviously, though, I'll say what I say every time, which is I want to work with the county. I want to be a good neighbor with the county. And so I encourage them to reach out to me. Let's sit down. Let's go to lunch. Let's break bread. I'd love to have a discussion and start a dialogue because, again, the cooperation between a city and a county is important. Case in point is one of the organizations that we've been working with is the Gwinnett County Police Department. So if you come to any of our City of Mulberry meetings, you probably notice that we usually have one or two representatives from the Gwinnett County Police Department present. And so they come and they listen to our meetings, but they also provide us with important data of any crime that happens within the city, how many officers are present, and they're basically there to address resident concerns and to discuss various if anyone wants to talk about the police services and any complaints or issues that might arise. And so those officers come, and so that's the first thing that we do is that Gwinnett County Police is great about providing us with updates, providing us having a discussion about various items that happen. And a perfectly good example is there was some issues down the line of maybe some speeding at Hamilton Mill Parkway, for example. And so there were some residents that showed up and discussed that, and they ultimately, Gwinnett County Police stepped up patrols on that road. And so I don't want you to think that all of the relationships with the county is not good. Because again, our experience is that we've still had great working relationships with many of the agencies at the county level. And so we've worked with the police department. We also play an important role with Gwinnett County Public Schools. Now, unfortunately, the city has no authority to step in and make policy or to make decisions about the school system. But our planning and zoning does matter, right? And so when you have a school like Ivy Creek Elementary or Duncan Creek where the schools are overcrowded, there's not enough room for the students, the decisions that the city makes at the city level is obviously important for future generations of students who will come through that school, right? To ensure that school overcrowding does not become a problem. And so your elected officials with the Gwinnett County School District, we're always asking for data of how many kids are at this school, what's the capacity of the school, what's the student to teacher ratio. These are all things that at the city level that we look at and we focus on, because if we go and if one particular school is overcrowded and we approve a huge neighborhood or anything over here, we want to know the effect that that's going to have on the school system. And so there has to be that level of coordination between the county system as well as the city. And so again, My goal is always to be a good partner, to always be a good resident of Gwinnett County, to work with the county and do what I can to mend the fences, to build bridges, and to work with them on a day-to-day basis. But unfortunately, the city of Mulberry only takes over 3 services: planning and zoning, meaning like what gets built; code enforcement, which is things like various violations of any ordinances; and last is stormwater management, which we plan to take on over the next year or so. And so those are the 3 services that the city of Mulberry provides. Anything else would still be provided by Gwinnett County. And so those services, we have to continue to work with the county and figure out and determine what is the best way moving forward that's going to, again, keep our residents safe and make this a great community to live in. So that's kind of how we coordinate with the county level. But you might be surprised to also find out that we coordinate pretty substantially with the state as well. And the major way that we coordinate with the state is with the Georgia Department of Transportation. So the Georgia Department of Transportation has jurisdiction and authority over any of the state highway systems that come through our area. And so the big one, when you think of the city of Mulberry, there's really 2 main roads that come through the city of Mulberry that are state highways. One is Brazelton Highway 124. So 124 enters our city down basically at Gravel Springs Road and then follows along all the way to the county line at Barrow County. So that is a state highway. So that is a state responsibility. So if the city wanted to make any changes to that roadway, we would be required to get permission and to go through the state. Because again, the Georgia State DOT has complete jurisdiction over that road. And so even if we decided tomorrow that we wanted to do a full-scale blowout of Brazelton Highway 124, we couldn't do it because, again, we don't have the jurisdiction. We would have to work with the state DOT to get permission to do that. Now, the other major road that runs through our city, and it kind of runs adjacent to it, is Gravel Springs 324. So 324 is another, again, state highway. Anytime you hear these numbered highways, those are typically state highways. And so that would be another roadway that the state would control, the state DOT. And so I've met with numerous Georgia State DOT representatives, talk to them about resident concerns about 124, talk to them about resident concerns about 324, and kind of discuss maybe future plans of what can happen in those areas. Now, the Georgia State DOT also has an interesting role with the federal highway system. So Georgia DOT also has the authority to make changes to the federal highway, basically under their laws or the rights that they have. And so things like the Hamilton Mill exit, right? We've had a lot of discussion about that. The plan that they're going to add an extra turn lane for traffic exiting from I-85 northbound onto Hamilton Mill, and then ultimately tying that into 124. That, again, is completely within the jurisdiction of the Georgia DOT. And so we can stand there, we can say, oh, we don't like this, or we want this change. But at the end of the day, that's the state DOT. And so they are the ones that make decisions based on money that's been allocated to them by the state of Georgia, safety concerns they have, and then various projects that they plan on doing. And so that's a big one because sometimes our residents reach out to us. For example, there was some discussion about maybe one day putting a exit at Flowery Branch Road or Spout Springs Road, right? Adding an additional exit to I-85 in our area. And unfortunately, we can advocate for that. We can fight and say we want to have that. But at the end of the day, it's always the state DOT that's going to be the one to make that decision. And they have very strict requirements that the federal government puts on them that requires them to have, certain traffic requirements or certain things that must be done, certain distance between exit. And so often, even when the state DOT and the local jurisdiction decide and coordinate together and say, hey, we're going to add an exit to the interstate, I've been told that typically is a 15-year process. For those of you that travel up and down 85 to Atlanta, maybe, You might be familiar with this through at the McGinnis Ferry exit down in Swanee. So the state DOT has been working on that project for, I believe it's been 10 to 15 years, and it still is not open yet. I think they're nearing completion, but they aren't there yet. So unfortunately, I'll be long gone. I have a term limit, so I'll be long gone from the city of Mulberry by that point. But, again, Mulberry's doing what we can to go ahead and put the feelers out, start the process of, considering an exit at Flowery Branch Road, considering an exit at Spout Springs. But unfortunately, it's completely out of our control. And because of all the federal requirements, it's an extremely long process. For those of you that are reaching out to me and saying, hey, we need another exit at Flowery Branch Road, I agree 100%. I am right there on board with you. But unfortunately, it's not my decision to make. That would be a state DOT decision. And really, it would be a federal government, federal highway decision after the DOT, Georgia DOT, submits that proposal to them. And so again, that's one of those ways that the city of Mulberry kind of coordinates with the state, is with the state DOT. Another way that we coordinate with the state DOT is with the Department of Community Affairs, or DCA. So the Department of Community Affairs is a state agency that basically governs cities and counties. So it basically says, hey, these are certain requirements that we're going to put in place, certain ethics and certain things that you need to file and keep us up to date, certain financial requirements. And so DCA just kind of acts as, you could think of it as a regulatory agency for cities to make sure that they're financially responsible, that everything is done correctly as far as filings and this or that. And so the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, DCA, is one of the organizations that Mulberry is working very closely with because we are a new city. And so DCA's kind of given us a list and said, hey, Mulberry, these are the 10 things that we need you to do in the next 2 to 5 years. As a new city, to catch you back up to where everybody else is, we need you to approve these things. We need you to coordinate these different services with Gwinnett County, and we need you to file these important documents. And so there's a long list of documents and items that have to be done for DCA. Luckily, Jamie Palmer, our city manager, has done a phenomenal job working with DCA and their representatives to make sure we stay up to date on those filings and that everything moves through. But DCA, or the Georgia Department of Community Affairs down in Atlanta, is another very important agency that we work with the state. Because we are in Gwinnett County, another state agency we work with is called the Atlanta Regional Commission. They basically make sure that all of the traffic, all of the transportation concerns are addressed through kind of responsible growth within Atlanta. That's another major part of it. And then obviously we work a lot with our local state representatives. Majority Leader Chuck F. Strachan, Senator Clint Dixon have been very helpful to us and obviously been very friendly towards our Mulberry initiatives and making sure that Mulberry is a success. And so we're very thankful for them and the work that they've done, among others. I mean, there's been many state representatives that have done a phenomenal job at making sure that Mulberry is successful. And so these are just various state agencies we work with. And then I also mentioned the federal government. I had the privilege of meeting with Representative Andrew Clyde at City Hall, who was very interested in learning more about Mulberry and learning about what the federal government can do to make sure Mulberry is a success. And so he was very receptive in helping us get our census data updated to deal with other federal agencies that we need to work with. And so your team at Mulberry, both this on the staff side and the city manager, as well as your elected officials and mayor, we have worked tirelessly to have great relationships with the county, with the state of Georgia, and with our federal representatives. And all of them have been great in making sure that we have the tools and the resources that we need to be successful. And so that's one of the kind of major surprises, I would say, for me as the mayor. I mean, I was new to local government. I've never been a politician. I've never been in local government before. But to learn the amount of coordination that happens, right? That it's not just you're on an island and the city's operating on its own, that you have to work with the county, that you have to negotiate for these services, that you have to go to the state to deal with any state highway roadways or federal highway that's coming through. And then also the federal government, things like the Census Bureau that we have to work with and update our population census. These are all aspects of coordination at all levels of government that are very important. And so this podcast, Coker on the Record, is just my ability to talk to you and interview some important people at the city so you can stay up to date as to what's going on in the city and ask questions and get your answers to things that might be happening or concerns or ideas that you might have. So if you like getting these updates, I would encourage you to like and subscribe. But I really appreciate everybody who have followed us, who have subscribed. We've gotten a great number of listeners, and I love, if you're a listener, keep coming up to me at city council meetings. I've had multiple people come up to me at city council meetings and say, I listened to your podcast, and it makes me feel good. So thank you for doing that, and I appreciate you when you come up and do that, and I appreciate you for listening. So if you have any questions, or if I can help you in any way, obviously reach out to me. But until next time, thanks for listening.